Every human being has a calling. When what you do is not just what you do, it's when you can't escape it. It's bigger than you are. If you follow the call, you probably remember the day it happened. You were probably a kid. That whisper inside said, "This is who you are." Randy Nash was only 5 years old when he first felt it. In this new series, Experts on Main Street takes you behind the scenes to the mysterious world where life meets death every day. Randy Nash of Sumner Funeral and Cremation talks about the subject everyone says they don't want to talk about. But in truth, we all think about it a lot. Especially now when the fear of the pandemic has us 6 feet apart and hopefully not 6 feet, well, you know. Experts on Main Street. This series is called 6 Feet Away, with the youngest president of the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association, Randy Nash. I'm Devin O'Day. How did you get here? How does someone so young as you end up with a life calling of being a funeral director and having a funeral home?
I've heard several people say this over the years. You don't choose funeral service, it chooses you. So my grandfather died when I was 5. We were eating dinner at his house. My brother and I were there. My parents had gone to Opryland, USA in the 90s to go see a concert, and my grandparents had been out of town and they wanted to take care of us. And my grandmother was cooking dinner, and he sat down. She was about to serve food, and he told my grandmother, he said, "I don't feel good, I'm sick." And he had a heart attack right there and just kind of slumped back in his chair. And that was it. I was 5. My brother was 3. He doesn't remember any of it, and I'm kind of thankful that he doesn't. I kind of feel sorry for him that he doesn't remember as much about my grandfather as I do. One of us has vivid memories, and one of us has nothing, which just shows you the ages we were at, I guess. Call 911 and all that stuff's happening, and the last thing I remember seeing, paramedics trying to save his life, giving CPR and whatever else they were doing. I remember seeing them do that, taking him out of the house. That was the last thing I remember until we got to see him when we had this visitation, and it was a whole lot better image for sure for a 5-year-old boy. And my parents didn't shy us away from the process and didn't have a babysitter keep us while the visitation and the funeral was going on. They involved us in it. They let us be there. I went with them when they made arrangements at the funeral home and everything. I remember doing that. The calming presence that the man had when he talked to us, he later became one of my mentors in the business. And I think that there's a lot of people that can tell a story like that in this industry. You have a lot of people that are multi-generational in this industry, but you have a lot of people like me who are not. I'm a first generation funeral director in Balmer. I grew up. My family was in the car business for my entire life. I still have family that does that. My grandfather, the one who passed away, started in the car business in the 50s and did it until the day he died. And in 2005, we sold our family's business, but I was already doing something different and had already got involved in the funeral business. Sorry. And so we're just going to try to keep people, distance as much as we can, and then only allow a few people into the sanctuary at a time. Do the best we can. It'll just be everybody trying to work together. So
looking to be quite a few people, I was thinking.
Oh yeah. So we're gonna figure it out though. I think it'll all work out.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care. So, when I started working in the funeral industry, I was 14, and my dad had a friend that owned a funeral home and gave me the chance to start doing it, and I worked for him for a few years and for his family. Come work at a funeral home in Hendersonville, my hometown. And I worked for that company for about 15 years until this past March. I had the opportunity to purchase what was at the time known as Sumner County Funeral and Cremation Services, and now I renamed as Sumner Funeral and Cremation. I tell people I had 2 dreams in my life, and I always wanted to be a funeral director, and I always wanted to own my own business, my own funeral home, and I get to do that every day, which is pretty neat. There's not a lot of people that get to do that, so I enjoy coming to work every day. I enjoy there's no 2 days are alike. You never know what you're going to have from one day or the next. And so that's the thing that I think is so cool about this business. You get to deal with all kinds of different people. in all kinds of different situations. You get to be the calm in the storm for them, the shoulder to cry on. You get to be their advocate when they, when words are not there for them, you get to speak on their behalf. It's a huge honor. It's a huge deal, in my opinion, to be able to do that for people. I may be self-employed, but I work for the families. We answer to them. We're family-owned and operated. I'm a lifelong resident of Sumner County. I've lived here my entire life. My wife's lived here her entire life. I think that's a big deal to people. I think that people want to know that the people that are taking care of them are here. They're here to stay. The buck stops here. If you have an issue, I'm gonna resolve it. When we take your loved one into our care, it's a huge thing. We're gonna treat your family like our own family, and we're gonna make sure that we find a way to celebrate your loved one's life. However you see it done, however you want it done, is what we're gonna do. We are here to help. We're here to guide. We're here to direct. We're here to serve you in the way we want to be served.
You've had the privilege, and you refer to it as that, of being able to lay to rest some people who were impactful in your life. Let's talk about your first grade teacher.
In 2014 was, I don't know how else to describe it, but it was a hell of a year. So there's a lot of ups and downs. I got married that year, but 2 days before I got married, I directed the funeral for my first grade teacher. Her name was Betsy Potts. And I'll say Dr. Betsy Potts. After she was my teacher, she later on became a principal, and she earned her doctorate, so she deserves to be called Dr. Potts. I grew up in Hendersonville. I went to Good Pasture Christian School in Madison from 3-year-old preschool through high school. And the president for a long time and one of the founders of Good Pasture Christian School was a man named Dr. Bill Rule, who's Betsy's father. She was my first grade teacher and was my brother's first grade teacher, and it was a privilege, to take care of her. It was kind of surreal doing that. When she passed away, she was not currently working at Good Pasture, but she was a graduate of Good Pasture. Her husband was, her kids were. Her father helped start the school, so it was fitting that we had the visitation and service for her at the school. There's a large auditorium there that is actually named after her father, the William Rule Fine Arts Center. We had her visitation, her funeral there. I'm going to guess there was probably 2,000 people at her funeral. It was just an amazing outpouring of love and care for that family and former students and alumni and people from all over the place that came to pay their respects. And it was just really neat. She impacted a lot of lives, and it was a huge honor for me. That was kind of definitely a surreal experience for me, because that was the auditorium where I graduated from kindergarten, where I was in plays and different things at school and band concerts, and where my brother graduated high school, where I graduated high school, where my her younger brother graduated from high school. So there's a lot of meaningful things that happened there in my life. Since then, I've done 2 more funerals there for other people that have passed away that we utilized the auditorium. It's an experience going back there and doing that. I think it's neat too that the school is gracious enough to offer that facility.
There's something very remarkable that I'm noticing. It's the empathy that you have. How do you handle all the emotion coming at you from all of these families?
That's a good one. Faith. I grew up in a Christian home, grew up to a Christian school. We try to raise my kids in a Christian home. You have to definitely be in tune with where you are spiritually. In this business, in this industry, I hate to say the word funeral business. I consider it an industry. You deal with a lot of different ministers and stuff like that, and that was one of the things when we got married. When my wife and I got married, you become friends with these ministers, and you don't want them to feel left out when you get married or somebody in your family dies. And I told my wife that I'll be the only person she knows that when I die, there'll be like 18 ministers at the funeral hopefully wanting to talk. God forbid if they do. So, but that's an important part. I think that's the biggest thing is I'm not afraid to pray with families. I learned that from someone, and when we make transfers, when we bring people into our care, I'm not afraid to pray with families at that time. Being active, having a hobby, having an outlet is a big deal too. For a while, I don't want to call it a hobby, but I worked for several years as a reserve deputy with the sheriff's office here. So that was something that got my mind off of the funeral industry, but it just became too much when we had kids, and just I couldn't do both. But I have a huge place in my heart for law enforcement still. And having a supportive wife and family and kids, my family's always been supportive. My wife, when we first met, when you're in your dating life as a single funeral director, it's kind of tough because you never know what's going to happen. And one of our first few dates, I was on call, and we had to leave in the middle of it, so she got a good dose of it at the beginning. And so now she just knows that, vacations get postponed. Sometimes we have to leave vacations. Sometimes vacations get canceled. Sometimes they have to go without me. Holidays are always interesting. Empathy is a huge defining thing in any funeral director. Some of us, I'll go ahead and raise my hand, me included, get accused of being too empathetic, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that just, you can feel what they're feeling. That's what they say. Empathy is the ability to enter into someone's feelings and feel what they're feeling, and I think that that's a big thing. But what makes a funeral director is the person that can really feel what they're feeling and not be afraid to take on some of that for them. We're dealing with tragedy on a daily basis. When people come to us, it doesn't get much worse. And we have to be able to handle that for them and be able to put some of that on our shoulders and try to take some of that away from them. If we're not doing that, then I don't know if we're doing our job the right way.
6 Feet Away, a podcast with our expert on Main Street, Randy Nash of Sumner Funeral and Cremation in Gallatin, Tennessee. He is called to be a calming presence, a knowing guide through the most difficult of times. You can find more information at sumnerfuneral.com. And believe me, there is no question that's too odd or unusual. Every life is unique, and so is every passage from this life. His phone number is 615-452-9059. And of course, we include all of his information in the notes of this podcast. I'm Devin O'Day from Main Street Today.